wide receivers in the portal. I know usually it's the quarterbacks get the most shine, but because we talked to Ron Bellamy yesterday, had a little bit to say about both Donovan McCulley, who comes over from Indiana, and Anthony Simpson, who comes over from UMass. A little bit more of an enigma on his part. We'll get to him in a second, but I want to talk about how these guys that they brought in. Again, we've had several conversations at this point of maybe the caliber of talent or to what extent there were needs at all of these positions. Wide receiver was one of the biggest ones. Had they not landed Bryce Underwood, maybe only quarterback would have been above that. But after that, you walk out of the offseason with Donovan McCulley, who to me, and you go by the feedback, you go by what guys are saying, seems to me like he's already established himself as, if not the number one guy in that room, a guy who's going to be in the mix for that, and someone who might already be maybe considering a jersey change to that famed number one at the University of Michigan.
I miss the days when it was earned and, it was elite, used as a recruiting tool, but that's old guy stuff, right? I will say that he is unequivocally the number one receiver in that room, and that concerns me a little bit. And you're talking about, fair or not, he was kind of an Indiana cast-off, right? He got passed over for whatever reason, and then in October, he hit the transfer portal last year, and I think sometimes a change of scenery does a guy good, right? And I think that's going to be the case with him, and I think he's going to have a good year. At the same time, this is a guy that on past elite rooms of Michigan receivers would have been maybe like the number 3 guy, right? So there's a lot of expected of him. I think he's got the skills. Do I think he's an elite receiver? No. Do I think he's a good receiver? Yes. And to me, the bigger concern is who steps up behind him. I think he's going to have a good year and he'll be that number 1 target. But if you can take out a number 1 target and not have to worry about anybody else, fellas, then you can take any receiver out of an offense. And we've seen that. We've seen Michigan's defenses do that at times. So I like him. I like what I've seen from him, and the way things that I've heard about him adapting as a leader in that room excite me. At the same time, I'm not like jumping for joy thinking, oh boy, they got, the next Big Ten receiver of the year.
And Chris, think of this: maybe number 3 on a really good Michigan wide receiving core. That might even be a stretch for some of the great ones,
right?
But he was number 4 or 5 on a pretty good Indiana receiving core last year. Not nearly, Michigan has had a long tradition of great receiver play. It hasn't been as much lately, but if you go back 10, 15 years, and then prior to that, you saw it, especially with those guys that were number 1. So it is a little bit concerning. Like, how good is Donovan McCulley? Is he just much better than the rest of the pack in the Michigan receiver room, or is he actually going to be somebody who could be top 10, 15 in the Big Ten, which would still mean you're pretty good because you got 18 teams there, and if you could have a number 1 that's at least somewhere in that ballpark, then you're looking at a legitimate weapon for Bryce Underwood or whoever the quarterback is to work with. So that's a concern. And is he the number 1 wide receiver? I don't know who would really be in contention other than him, which is another, concern with this group. I think Frederick Moore could be in the mix for that. Samaj Morgan get some time at slot, but he's not ready for that, in my opinion. Usually an outside guy earns that role. So he's definitely there. The interesting thing about Donovan McCulley and Anthony Simpson, the 2 transfers they brought in at this position, is neither of them finished the year at their last school. Just a weird quirk, for different circumstances. But, so that maybe, he hasn't played in a while, and that's not necessarily a great thing in terms of being sure about what he's going to be this year, but maybe he has a big jump to make after, he'll be older and another year working out, training, that sort of thing, because he is kind of new to this position after being a quarterback early in his career.
I think with McCulley too, it's less about, is he your number 1? Is he, is he going to have the most catches, the most yards, touchdowns? I think what he brings is an archetype of receiver that, outside of Peyton O'Leary last year, which is, I like Peyton O'Leary. He had a huge 3rd down catch in that win over Ohio State, but they haven't had a big bodied wide receiver that, a jump ball guy, a guy you can throw the ball down the field, and, his size, his length alone can help maybe throws that aren't as accurate or aren't as on the money, or he's the only guy that can make a play. And I think adding that type of guy to an offense that, Chip Lindsey, it's not, we always say it's not going to be the air raid, but they are going to be a little more aggressive and take shots down the field. And I can't sit here with full confidence and say, they're going to be able to recreate what Nico Collins did in this offense, 4 or 5 years ago, but it's something they haven't had, because I like Samaj. Samaj isn't a guy that's going to go up and grab a jump ball. Frederick Moore, I think, is, just a little more kind of a slot type of guy too. We haven't really seen him, we've seen him have issues tracking the ball down the field as well. So I think he just brings something that they didn't have. And I don't know how much, really the question is, how much is that going to be used? How much is he, does he become a go-to guy? Or we talk about some of these issues he had at Indiana. Does that get erased by playing with, I don't think it's a hot take to say that even as a 17-year-old going on 18, going to be playing with the most talented quarterback he's ever had. So it is interesting, because when you look at really both of these portal wideouts they brought in, the bulk of the production in both of their careers came 2 seasons ago. And like you said, Clayton, neither of these guys finished last season with the teams that they were on. And, it's a little more of an enigma with Anthony Simpson, only because we're not really sure what happened there. McCulley, he's even said this, that there was, we know that last offseason Michigan had some interest in him, and then he decided to come back. I think to a certain extent, he kind of had one foot out the door and was just kind of biding his time until Michigan was an option again. So it's tough to say. I mean, there's still so many questions there. I think we'd be a lot more comfortable coming out of this offseason with knowing you have the bird in hand of a guy who's got 2-3 years of really good production at a high major school, or at least production last season. But 2 different type of guys as well. And there's not as much to say about Simpson. Hasn't enrolled, or he has enrolled. He won't be with the team until fall camp. A smaller guy, more kind of in line with the type of guys that they've had, like a Samaj Morgan, Frederick Moore, Tyler Morris when he was here. So just in the aggregate, how do we feel about, I mean, I guess they're 2 floor raising additions, but I think when you look at the potential of the room, it's going to be determined, I think, by the guys who were here already.
I agree. I think Simpson's a depth piece. I think McCulley is your number 1. And then after that, you're going to need Fred Moore to step up. What's he got? 13 career catches, I think. And I keep hearing about this great speed, and he can get behind defenses. We still need to see it. And
had a nice bowl game, though.
He did. And then Jamar Browder as a true freshman. I think next year he's probably going to have a good year, not this coming year, but I think the following year. These freshman receivers, even the best receivers, I've said this so many times in Michigan history, it's that second year where these guys really break out, right, and are outstanding. So that's what I would expect from him. So you don't want to put heavy expectations on a true freshman. So then after that, Samaj Morgan kind of is who he is, kind of like that reverse guy and the bubble screens and things like that. So this room still needs some more help. And that's why I was disappointed that they didn't get some more help in the offseason from the portal. Simpson, with all due respect, didn't move the needle for me. There were a couple other guys that they were in on, and they had to spend a lot more money, I think, than they thought on keeping their guys here, guys, from what I've heard, rather than going out and maybe getting that starting left tackle or getting another wide receiver. That's at least the way that they're phrasing it and putting it. So to me, this is an issue. And the good news is you've got a couple tight ends. I think Marlon Klein's going to take a step up, and I think Hogan Hansen's going to be the next great pass-catching tight end here, and I think that will help. I think he will be Colston level and light. John Jansen, you guys can read this in the football preview, former Michigan All-American offensive lineman, told me he reminds him of Jeremy Tooman, the tight end on the 97 team All-American, who had an outstanding year and an outstanding career and a good pro career too. So that helps. And the fact, I think, that Chip Lindsey likes to spread the wealth between the backs, the receivers, and the tight ends. And Jansen also had some really nice things that you can read about when it comes to route trees and finding ways to get guys open if they aren't elite route runners. So to me, that's going to help. But all told, when you'll have to read it in the magazine to see the star total out of 5, but it ain't real high.
Uh-oh.
Simpson he's kind of intriguing. I don't know what happened last year, why he left the team. Don Brown kicked him off before he got fired. But he is an interesting slot receiver who can run jet sweeps, and he runs weird. Do you guys agree? Like he has a weird, just the way he runs is odd.
runs weird like Riley Green runs in the outfield for the Tigers, or runs weird like he's got like his hands are moving or something like Phoebe and Friends, or what are we talking about
It's
here?
hard to explain. He's just
Okay.
got like a weird.
I gotta go back
weird
and look
running.
now you've intrigued me.
Yeah, and but he can run some jet sweeps. He does have some speed, and he can catch some of those short passes. So I mean, I think he could earn a role as a slot receiver. Maybe him and Samaj Morgan earn time. And just going back to the fact that we're talking about two receivers that didn't really play last year. I mean, Simpson had 3 catches. I think McCulley had 2 for 21 yards, and then they both left their teams. And maybe one of them will, kind of surprise. They are going to be older, more veteran, and Simpson coming in the summer holds him back a little bit, but he should be here now and be able to get those reps in with the quarterbacks. But to your point, Chris, about the freshmen and how much we can actually rely on them, or Michigan can. Braylon Edwards is a freshman, 3 catches. Jeremy Gallen is a freshman, 4 catches. Amani Toomer, 16. Anthony Carter, 17. Those are actually, some of the higher ones. David Terrell, 13. Manningham, 27. Roundtree, 32. Wasn't a ton around him, but Ty Streets, 5. Marquise Walker, 4. Jason Avant, 2. I mean, I've written about this in the past. That sophomore year is the breakout historically, as you said. So that's exciting that they did rack up some talent here that's coming in as freshmen for the future. And Bryce Underwood, going to be the quarterback of the future. So he's going to have some good targets to throw to down the line, I think, with the guys they brought in. Andrew Marsh, Jamar Browder, Jacob Washington is here now this month as well. He was a top 100 receiver. So, that's exciting for the future, but in the here and now, we'll see how much these transfer additions help the rest of the room that really had a tough time last year, quarterback situation or not. It was not a very good receiver room.
Yeah, I mean, I think they'll probably have more than 5 receptions between the two of them this year. Just a hot take, and that might be something that is achieved in the first quarter of game 1. You never know. Just kind of last thought on wide receivers. I know one of the storylines, at least over the last couple of weeks, because we've heard, Isaiah, our buddy over at Wolverines Wire, had written about Samaj Morgan's comments about how he was used in the offense last year. We talked to Ron Bellamy yesterday. I do think there's a little more, there's more to his game than just being the tunnel screen or the bubble screen guy. I think so much of that last year was just so predictable and then blocked so poorly and all that. I do think he has more to give, and I think we could see him take a bit of a leap this year, but you never know. There's good competition here, but a lot of question marks.